king and his men stole the queen from her bed and bound her in her bones. The seas be ours, and by the powers where we will we roam. Yo ho, all hands, hoist the colors high. Heave ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die. Now some have died and some are alive, and others sail on this.
What's up, people? I've been sick as fuck all week. I'm still coughing. I'm like tripping balls from fucking cold medicine all week and tonight too. So I'm doing my best to hold it together. But we don't get like a ton of views for this pirate history kind of theme that I do. But for the people that do watch, I got a handful of messages this week from people asking me why I didn't do one yet and when's the next one gonna be, which I appreciate. That's awesome, and I'm glad to know that there's a few people out there that are really enjoying this series. I love pirate history; it's one of my favorite things. I mentioned before, I've got tons of the books. I've tracked all kinds of stuff down, old manuscripts and pamphlets, and some I've bookmarked because they're insanely expensive, right? I just have to take advantage of some of the free libraries out there like the rest of us normal people, all you fucking pores, just like me, right? But I love this stuff. I love this stuff. So I'm glad to know that there's a few other people out there that have been enjoying this series and took the time to check it out and give me a shout and see what was going on. What's up, Aegon? Good to see you, my friend. Hope everything's well with you. But yeah, man, I've been sick as fuck all week long. Just basically, like I said, just like tripping balls from this fuck. I hate medicine. I don't take medicine. I don't drink. I don't fucking do anything but smoke weed. And when I take these like daytime and nighttime cold medicines, they get my brain twisted and just get me all fucked up. So I'm going to do my best for everybody tonight. Like I said, a few people have written me throughout the week checking in on the show, wondering why I haven't done one yet this week. And we're going to do our best to get through one tonight. So I got the Skull Bro show tomorrow. And then I think I'm just going to try and rest throughout the weekend if I haven't shaken this thing off by tomorrow. What's up, Honey B? Always good to see you. No, I'm not really feeling better. Honestly, you're going to hear me coughing. I'm sure I sound nasal as fuck. Like I can hear my own voice, So I'll be like muting my microphone to blow my nose and stuff like that. I'm sure you'll hear me coughing. But I've got some lemonade here that's been helping kind of cut that shit down in my throat a good bit. I've got my weed here, of course. We're going to be smoking weed and talking about pirates like we always do. And, the weed helps kind of clear this shit out of my lungs, man. It actually helps me breathe better. Obviously you don't want to sit and smoke like a fucking mook all day long. It's just going to irritate you. But here and there I find when I have these respiratory illnesses that, a couple tokes off the pipe throughout the day, a couple at night, they help, man. They help dislodge a lot of that shit. You might get one or two good coughs, and then I can breathe better. So yeah, thanks, Honey B. I appreciate it. But yeah, we're going to be picking back up where we left off last week. For anybody that hears this that's not familiar with the series so far, this will be the 7th episode. If you haven't been following along, please do. I encourage you to go back, check out the other episodes. We cover a lot of amazing Buccaneer and pirate history, following through with firsthand accounts That's what we read here in this series is firsthand accounts from people that were there for these stories. So we've got all the Captain Morgan stuff. We've got the Avery stuff. We've got Lawlenois, Rock Brasiliano, just so many good stories. And again, firsthand accounts from people that were there. We've got a lot of the histories of the Buccaneers, where they came from, where the name comes from, all that good stuff. So definitely go back and check those out. Give them a listen. Last week, we left off just as Captain Maynard got his commission to officially go out and kill Blackbeard, right? They Spotswood, which was I believe the governor of Virginia at the time. I have to go back and I believe it was Virginia. He officially put out a proclamation saying, listen, the governor down in North Carolina is fucked up, right? He's working with the pirates. He can't be trusted. We can't depend on him to root these guys out. So Governor Spotswood, am putting out this proclamation, and I'm putting a bounty on pirates and pirate captains specifically. He says that the greatest bounty right now is for Blackbeard, because that's who is causing, all these problems, and what originally brought a group of people from, traders, business people from North Carolina who knew they couldn't depend on their own governor. They actually got together and went to Virginia, and they went to their governor and said, hey man, we're getting robbed and fucked. Our governor's in on it. We can't get any kind of help from him, so we need you to do something about this. And just as luck would have it, at that time, there was 2 giant fucking man-o-war sitting at the docks in Virginia. And the governor says, well, I've got all kinds of military here right now. We can't necessarily send our giant ships and stuff down into these rivers and inlets where Blackbeard likes to hide out. But we can certainly send some soldiers, and I can certainly put out a proclamation and put some bounties on these people. We'll send some soldiers after them in boats that can maneuver those inlets and rivers and stuff like that. He says, and we can take care of this. We can do this. No, what's up, Mandy? Thanks. I appreciate that. I'm working on it. Like I said, I'm drinking my lemonade over here. I'm taking my medicine. I'm going to take I'm going to take my nighttime cold medicine after I get done with this show. I think we're going to do this for about an hour, maybe a little bit more tonight. And then we'll pick up again next week when I'm, definitely feeling better. But that cold medicine gets my mind just flipped and tripped out. So I waited to take it until after I do this. But I've got my lemonade here. Got a little smoke. So I'll be muting this from time to time just so I can blow my nose and maybe have a good cough, without coughing right into everybody's face, as it were, right? But anyway, right. So last week, that's where we left off, was, the governor of Virginia had been told that this was going on, that Blackbeard was down there. And remember, Blackbeard had taken a pardon initially. When he went to North Carolina, he took a pardon and he ditched a bunch of his guys, right? That's a very important part of the story, I think, that we should bring up again real quick before we dive into this, is that, along the way, when Blackbeard was coming up from the Caribbean, when Blackbeard was coming up from the Caribbean, he met up with this guy named Bonnet, who was captaining his own ship at the time. He says, hey, you've got a ship full of people. You're out of pirating. Come join us. That'd be cool, right? So they get together, and Bonnet's all stoked. And after a few days, Blackbeard's like, oh, I know why you're stoked, man. It's because you're not a fucking pirate, right? He's like, I don't know where the fuck you came from, but you suck at this. You can't sail a ship. You know nothing about the sea. You've obviously spent very little time at sea. And then he finds out that Bonnet was a rich guy. He was a trader in Barbados who just dreamed of being a pirate. And that's okay, right? Blackbeard wasn't hating on him for it. He found out that Bonnet had always dreamed of being a pirate, that he fucking basically hated his wife. He raised his kids and he had a bunch of money and all these businesses, and he decided to sell some of his businesses and buy a ship on the DL, right? And he went down to the docks and he found some ne'er-do-well sailors, and everybody warned him. They said, bro, you don't know what you're getting into, right? You're fucking up. You're not a gangster, bro. Don't be going down there and talking to these, hardcore guys. They're going to fuck you. Well, Bonnet's like, I've always wanted to do this. I'm going to do it. And he did, right? So he had this ship. He got all these men together and he went out sailing and he went out pirating. He meets Blackbeard. He's like, holy shit, I'm actually right on a boat with Blackbeard. This guy I've heard about. It's crazy to him. So Blackbeard finds out that's who this guy really is, right? And Blackbeard's like, listen, man, I can't have you captaining a ship like this, right? You're going to have to let me put one of my men in charge of your ship. They'll captain the ship. They know how to sail. They know how to deal with these hardcore guys you've got on your boat. They're not going to walk over this guy. They're going to respect him, right? A lot of these people know each other, is what Blackbeard's trying to explain to him. Is like, all these old salty guys, a few of them are going to run into each other in different places. They're going to know one another. And Blackbeard says, listen, I'm not going to kill you. I could, but I'm not going to, right? He says, I could drop you off on shore and just take your shit and tell you to have a great day. I'm not going to do that to you, bro. I totally get it, right? You were living your life. You wanted to get the fuck out. I totally understand that, right? Blackbeard's like, listen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you stay. I'm going to let you hang out. I'm going to let you fucking play pirate. You're going to live your life in ease. You're not going to have to worry about anything. You're not going to have to do shit. You'll get a fair share, right? When we take prizes, you'll get a fair share just like everybody else. But he's like, there's no way in hell you're going to stay a captain on that ship. I don't give a fuck. So Bonnet goes along with this for a while, but then he starts getting really annoying to Blackbeard, right? He wants to be involved. He's also pissed off because he bought that boat, right? He put all that shit together. He wants to be captain. He doesn't want to sit in his bedroom all day like a child. And finally, Blackbeard's like, listen, man, you're going to have to fuck off. Okay. I tried to help you out. I could have killed you, but I didn't. I could have just fucking put you off on shore, but I didn't. I tried to be cool about it. Tried to put it in a way you'd understand, but now you're fucking annoying me and now you got to go. Right. So Blackbeard drops his fucking ass off. He's like, you got to go. And they take off with his boat and they do some pirating. But then Blackbeard decides he's going to take a pardon. Right. He has an ulterior motive, but he decides he's going to take a pardon. But he also decides he has way too many guys with him right now, that there's no way a governor is going to pardon 2 ships full of pirates. So go back and listen to the last episode. You'll get the entire rundown. But the short version is that Blackbeard runs his own ship aground on purpose, then has the other boat come in and do the same thing, acting like it's trying to get Blackbeard's ship off of this reef, right, or a sandbar, whatever. Blackbeard quickly jumps on the other ship and takes off and leaves a bunch of those pirates just stranded on a sandbank, right, in a river near the Ocracoke Inlet, North Carolina. Just leaves these pirates fucking stranded with nothing but the ship that they're on. It gets worse. He then sails about a league off of shore, finds this little spit of sand, and it says in the story, it says that there was not a tree, not a bush, not an animal on this fucking spit of sand, right? It's literally just a sandbar out in the water, a league offshore. And he puts all but 20 guys on that little sandbar and leaves them there with fucking nothing. He strands them a league off of shore in the middle of the ocean. Dick move, ladies and gentlemen, right? Big time dick move. Well, he goes with those 20 guys that he has left. He goes to the governor of North Carolina. They all get pardons. But his whole thing is, I'm going to take these pardons. I'm going to get to know the governor. I'm going to feel this dude out. You know, we'll take out a few people in town if they look to be a problem. And then we'll set up shop right here in North Carolina underneath this governor. And I'll flip this governor into working with us. You watch, right? So Blackbeard says, I'm going to flip this guy. That way we can go out pirating and we'll have a place to come to, and we can act like we're law-abiding citizens, right? We'll get this guy to help us, and we'll just basically sell him this shit for cheap, and then he can profit off of it and sell it into the town, whatever it is that we steal. They do that. Again, go back and listen to the last episode for the way that all works. It's all there. They start doing this, right? So they've got their pardons. They're hanging out on land for a good long while, a few months. Blackbeard takes a wife. The pirates that are with him are literally just fucking running mayhem over the local farms and townspeople. Everybody's getting really fed up with it. And they know that these guys are going out pirating, bringing shit back. They know that their governor's working with them. So again, like I say at the beginning of this show, where we left off last, is that finally these people were fed up. They went to the governor of Virginia and said, hey, listen, you know, this is what's going on. The governor's in on it with Blackbeard. He's not going to help us, and we're getting robbed. All of our stuff's getting fucked up. They're literally banging our daughters and our wives, you know, and they don't give a fuck. It's crazy. So the governor, Spotswood, in Virginia, says, okay, I got you. I totally understand. I'm going to put bounties out on all pirates. I'm going to put the biggest bounty of all out on Blackbeard. We've got these 2 men of war that have been sitting here for a while. The soldiers are bored. They're looking for something. They're literally looking for something to do. If I set these guys out and tell them to go kill pirates, they're going to be all about that shit. And that's exactly what he does. But they can't send the big ships out there after them, right? They can't send ships full of soldiers because Blackbeard is not just out in the open ocean. He's literally gone into this place called Ocracoke Inlet. And there's just like these little rivers and streams, and it's like shallower water. So they can't use the big ships. They have to use small boats. As a matter of fact, they're literally using boats with oars, right? Very small sail. And they have oarsmen on these boats. They don't even have cannon. They're all using their small arms and rifles and their swords, right? That's what they have to shoot with. These soldiers that are in these boats, they're not ships, they are boats. So, as I always say, even though I am sick and feeling like total shit, I'm actually going to mute this for a moment. I don't normally do that when I'm smoking, but we are going to smoke weed and talk about the pirates. So I don't want to cough directly into your face, being as sick as I am. So I'm going to mute this for just a moment. And when I come back, we're going to jump right into the story, which begins on the 17th of November, 1718, as Lieutenant Maynard sails out from the James River in Virginia. Okay, so let's, if you've got it, smoke it along with me. Smoke it if you've got it. Take a drink, take a sip on something if you're drinking. If not, just hang out for a moment. We'll be right back to the story. All right, that one wasn't actually so bad. But either way, better safe than sorry. I don't want to cough directly into this microphone and be a dick. What's up, Mickey? What's up, Roscoe? Always good to see you, man. Oh, man, he can't find a lighter. That is no good. You will find it. The one inside your house, you've got to like, I had a friend that would just like tape it to random things like screwdrivers and remote controls in his house because he always lost his lighter. He would tape it to a fucking butter knife or a fork or whatever he had laying around. What's going on here? Why does Roscoe need... Something happened to Roscoe? Oh, tore a ligament. Damn, bro. Yeah, that sucks, man. Well, that's something that's just going to have to heal, huh? Like I would say, I still hope you feel better soon, for sure. Legitimately, of course I do. But yeah, that's the kind of injury that's just going to have to heal for a little bit. That sucks, man. All right, let me take a sip of my lemonade. Oh. All right, here we go. Oh, is MRH in here? What's up, MRH? What's up, Maureen? Okay, so the 17th of November, 1718, Lieutenant Maynard sailed from Keequetan in the James River in Virginia. And the 21st in the evening, right? So he left on November 17th, sailed until the 21st of November. And in the evening, he finally came to the mouth of Ocracoke Inlet, where he got sight of the pirate known as Blackbeard. This expedition was made with all imaginable secrecy, and the officer had managed with all of the prudence that was necessary, stopping all boats and vessels that he met up with on his way down that were in the river, and he stopped them from going up the river, thereby preventing any intelligence from reaching Blackbeard, and receiving at the same time an account from them all of the exact place where the pirate was lurking. So as he's sailing down the river to get there, right? He left on the 17th. He didn't get to in sight of this guy until the 21st. And the whole time he's sailing down the river, anytime he saw a boat that was sailing in the same direction as him, what's up, KD? He made them stop or turn around and fuck off because he didn't want anybody getting in front of him that might be able to tip off Blackbeard that he was coming, right? And at the same time, anybody he saw coming up his way from the direction in which he was heading, he stopped and talked to them so that he knew the exact locations in the river that Blackbeard was hanging out in. But notwithstanding this caution, Blackbeard had information of the design from His Excellency of the province, meaning the governor of North Carolina got wind of it and sent word to Blackbeard. Okay, so he got information of that design from His Excellency of the province, and his secretary, Mr. Knight, wrote him a letter particularly concerning it, intimating that he had sent 4 of his men, which were all he could meet with in or about town, and so bid him to be upon his guard. So they actually sent him 4 guys to help out with the fight. And they said we couldn't find any more that were down for it, right? But we've got these 4 guys that'll help, hopefully. All right. So these men belonged to Blackbeard and were sent from Bathtown to Ocracoke Inlet, where the sloop lay, which is about 20 leagues. Blackbeard had heard several reports which happened not to be true. And so he gave the less credit to this. So he had heard that these people were coming after him before and they never showed up. So he was like, I don't know, man. Right? This letter's from the governor that he's down with and his secretary. They even sent him a handful of guys, right? And they're like, hey, listen, man, the fucking governor of Virginia sent some boats out after you with like actual soldiers. You need to be on your guard and watch the fuck out, right? So here's a few of your guys that you left back here in town. We figured that you could use a few more. Here's some of your guys. But Blackbeard's like, I don't know, man. I've heard this shit a few times and nobody's actually showed up or come after me. So, I don't know if I believe this or not. It says, Blackbeard had heard several reports which happened not to be true, and so gave the less credit to this. Nor was he convinced till he saw the sloops, right? Till he saw the soldiers, whereupon he put his vessel in a posture of defense. More than 25 men on board, though he gave out to all the vessels that he spoke with that he had 40. Okay, so he had 25. They're saying he had 25 guys on the boat with him, but he was telling people he had 40. When he had prepared for battle, he sat down and spent the night in drinking with the master of a trading sloop, who was thought had more business with Teach than he should have had. Lieutenant Maynard came to an anchor, for the place being shoal, which means shallow, and the channel intricate. There was no getting in where Teach lay that night. But in the morning, he weighed his anchor and sent his boat ahead of the sloops to sound, which means, for anybody that doesn't know, means to sound means you're checking the depth, right? You're like, imagine they'd take a rope with a mark at every interval, right? Maybe every foot or so. Put a rock at the end of the rope, drop it to the fucking bottom, and they just keep going through the water, finding out how deep it is as they go. That way they know how far each one of their boats, because some of their boats that are bigger won't be able to go in shallow water, right? Okay, so we'll say that again. So Lieutenant Maynard came to an anchor because he couldn't go through. He didn't want to go through there at night, is what it's saying, right? He came to an anchor, for the place being shallow and the channel intricate. There was no getting in to where Blackbeard lay that night. He's like, dude, it's dark, right? We have no idea how much more shallow this water could get. So let's just hang out here for the night. But in the morning, he weighed his anchor and sent his boat ahead of the sloops to check the depth of the water, to sound. And when he came within gunshot of the pirate, received his fire. Okay, so Blackbeard started shooting at him as soon as he was within gun range, whereupon Maynard hoisted the king's colors and stood directly toward him with the best way that his sails and oar could make. Blackbeard cut his cable and endeavored to make a running fight, keeping a continual fire at his enemies with his guns. Mr. Maynard, not having any guns on his boat, kept a constant fire with small arms, while some of his men labored at the oars. So remember, this is crazy. If you want to like visualize this, right? So Captain Maynard has sloops that are a little bit bigger, but they can't go through this shallow water. So Maynard, who's the soldier that's after Blackbeard, Maynard gets in a boat with some of these guys that are sounding, right, that are checking the depth of the water. And when as soon as they were within gunshot of Blackbeard started shooting at them and at their boat. As soon as that happened, Maynard put up the king's colors, which means he put up the fucking British flag, so that Maynard would know he's not a pirate and that he's the cops, right? Imagine that, basically, like he's the cops, right? He just put his fucking lights on, right? He just put the siren on so that Blackbeard would know this, you're under arrest, right? We're not robbers, we're not pirates, we're not regular dudes, we're the cops. So Maynard hoisted the king's colors and stood directly towards him, which means he kept going towards Blackbeard even though he was being shot at. Blackbeard says, okay, cool, cut his cable, right? Or in other words, got his boat underway, his ship underway, and he endeavored to make a running fight. So he wanted to get this guy chasing after him so he could just be shooting at him as he goes, right? Keeping a continual fire at his enemies. Mr. Maynard, not having any of those bigger guns on his boat, kept a constant fire with small arms, which means fucking pistols and rifles, while some of his men labored at the oars. So these guys are literally rowing after Blackbeard, right? They're rowing a boat after Blackbeard. Imagine that fucking crazy chase, right? Okay. Let's scoop this up. In a little bit of time, Blackbeard's sloop ran aground. Okay. So remember, Blackbeard was up and all his guys were up all night drinking. They're probably fucking trashed because this is first thing in the morning. They're probably still trashed. As soon as they saw that the cops were after them, they started running and shooting at them, but they probably weren't paying much attention to where they were going, or they didn't sound out the inlet very well because they actually ran. It was too shallow for their boat to continue. They ran aground, right? Okay. Where are we at? In a little time, Blackbeard's sloop ran aground, and Mr. Maynard's drawing more water than of the pirate, he could not come near him. So he anchored with half gunshot of the enemy, and in order to lighten his vessel, that he might run him aboard, the lieutenant ordered all of his ballast to be thrown overboard, and all the water to be staved, and then weighed and stood for him. So all of that ship talk. It's why I keep breaking this down for everybody. So Blackbeard runs aground. Remember, Maynard's in a fucking boat, and he's actually taking on water in his boat. And when they say ballast, it means typically stones, right? You could use anything as ballast, but what ballast is like a weight in a boat to keep it balanced, right? Huge ships, like in the bottoms of big ships, they have ballast. Back in the day, they would literally use boulders and huge stones, right? They would call them ballast stones. And it was literally just put in certain places in the boat to keep it balanced, right? They still do that now, but they're, obviously not rocks and stones. They're like giant hunks of metal or weights and things like that, weighting systems, pendulums even. Okay, so Blackbeard runs aground. Maynard's boat is taking on water, and it's heavy. He needs his boat to be faster. So instead of worrying about balance, he starts telling the guys to remove the ballast from the fucking boat. He says, toss all. Oh, I know, KD, you know what it is, but for all those people that are out there listening that don't know ship speak, right? Maynard starts throwing the ballast out of his boat so that it won't be as heavy, right? It won't sit as far down in the water either, right? Think about that. Everybody understands the science of volume, right? The more heavy your boat is, the lower into the water it's going to sit, right? As soon as you have too much weight in it, it's going to sink, obviously. Well, they're sitting very low in the water is exactly what this says, right? So in order to lighten the vessel, the lieutenant ordered all of his ballast to be thrown overboard, and he wanted all of the water that they had taken on to be scooped up and tossed the fuck out. Remember, they don't have a bilge pump or anything like that. They've got like one sail. This is just a small little boat, and he's got guys using oars. So Mr. Maynard's drawing more water than Blackbeard because he's in a bigger ship. He could not come near him. So he anchored within half gunshot of the enemy, and in order to lighten his vessel that he might run him aboard, the lieutenant ordered all of his ballast to be thrown overboard and all the water to be staved. And then he weighed and stood for him. So then he started heading directly towards him again. Upon which Blackbeard hailed him in a rude manner and said, "Damn you for villains, who are you, and from whence came you?" The lieutenant made him answer, "You may see by our colors we are no pirates." Blackbeard bid him send his boat on board that he might see who he was, but Mr. Maynard replied thus, "I cannot spare my boat, but I will come aboard of you as soon as I can with my sloop." Upon this, Blackbeard took a glass of liquor and drank to him with these words, "Damnation seize my soul if I give you quarter, or take any from you." In answer to which, Mr. Maynard told him that he expected no quarter from him, nor should he give him any. Now remember, anybody that's listened to this before, when I've explained to you what quarter is, that means mercy, right? That means conversation, parlay. We're not going to be having any of that. When you say no quarter, it means we're killing everybody. There is no conversation. There is no fucking getting out of it, right? We're not going to have a conversation about this. Now, back then, if you gave up and you didn't have a weapon in your hand and you were obviously submitted, think about it this way, like cops are like, put your hands up, right? Same kind of a fucking thing. If a pirate were to be fighting with a soldier, their leader gets killed, they drop their sword or their weapon and they put their hands up or they get down on their knees, they will absolutely not be murdered, right? In a situation like this. Maybe in a land war, they'd still kill them. But when you're on the ship, there were certain rules, and if you submitted, even under no quarter, right, and you were not fighting, and that guy could just take you with handcuffs, they would not kill you. That's exactly what they would do, right? But he's telling him, he says, to break this ship speak back down for everybody again. What that said was, Blackbeard says, "Who the fuck are you? Why are you chasing me?" Right? I see the British flag, but that doesn't mean shit to me. Who are you guys? Tell me. And he says, you can, and Maynard says, you can see by the flag that we're not pirates, right? And he says, we're soldiers. And Blackbeard says, okay, well, get in your fucking boat, bring it over here. And that basically means, like, come up on deck and talk to me like a man, and we'll see what happens, right? He's challenging him to a fight, but just like, this old gentleman pirate type speak, right? That's exactly what he says. Send your boat on board so we can see who you are. Mr. Maynard replied, I cannot spare my boat, but I will come aboard of you as soon as I can with my sloop, meaning his bigger boat, right? The one that he left from. Because this boat is sounding as they go, right? They're taking the fathoms. They're taking a measurement of how deep all this water is so that they know where they can take their larger sloop through and actually chase this fucking guy. But Blackbeard ran aground. So since he did that, Maynard's like, fuck, right? I'm just going to get all of this weight out of my boat. I'm just going to charge towards you right now. And then Blackbeard starts talking shit. Maynard talks a little bit of shit back to him. And then Blackbeard gets a glass of liquor and toasts him and says, hey, I'm not going to give you any quarter, and I'm not going to fucking ask you for any, right? He says, damn my soul if I do. Maynard told him that I expect no quarter, nor will I be giving any. So it's on at this point, right? It's on. By this time, Blackbeard's sloop fleeted, and as Mr. Maynard's sloops were rowing towards him, which being not above a foot high in the waist, and consequently the men all exposed as they came near together, there being hitherto little or no execution done on either side, the pirate then fired a broadside charged with all manner of small shot. So here we go, right? Blackbeard's like, okay, motherfuckers, you're going to keep coming. Now the sloops, Maynard's got his sloops coming up with his boat, right? They're all coming up on Blackbeard's ship, and it's run aground right now. They can't sail. So Blackbeard's like, here we go. And he just, a broadside means all of the cannon on that side of the ship. He just fired all of that side of the ship in a broadside at Maynard and the other sloops, at the cops, right? And it says he did it with all manner of small shot, which means it's just going to fucking spread out everywhere. And Maynard's men are exposed. Remember, they're about a foot high above the water. Their waistline is literally like a foot above the water. That's how heavy their boats are in this shallow water. Okay. So the pirate fired a broadside charged with all manner of small shot, a fatal stroke to them. The sloop the lieutenant was in having 20 men killed and wounded. So fuck, man. The boat that Lieutenant Maynard's in, right? This is the head of the guys. He's the one that's just been talking this shit with Blackbeard. 20 guys in the boat he was in got killed by this one broadside. More wounded. And the other sloop that he had with him had 9 people killed and more wounded from that one broadside. That shit's crazy. This could not be helped, for there being no wind, they were obliged to keep on their oars, otherwise the pirate would have got away from him, which it seems the lieutenant was resolute to prevent. Again, remember, this whole time, the boats that the cops are in are full on rope. They are just oar powered. You got people rowing after Blackbeard right now. Now, Blackbeard can't really run until he gets off of this fucking sand spit, right? But he's working on that right now. Believe that. But even still, these guys are rowing after him. And they just took a broadside of small shot that killed 29 people and wounded another handful of people. That shit's crazy. But it says the lieutenant was resolute to not let Blackbeard get away. He's still coming towards him. He doesn't give a fuck. After this unlucky blow, Blackbeard's sloop fell broadside to the shore. Mr. Maynard's other sloop, which was called the Ranger, fell astern, being for the present disabled. So the lieutenant, finding his own sloop had way and would soon be on board of Teach, he ordered all of his men down for fear of another broadside, which must have been their destruction and the loss of their expedition. So, right, okay, so they're getting close to Blackbeard's boat. It's still stuck. One of his boats is not in an optimal position to board Blackbeard's ship, but the one that Captain Maynard is 100% getting ready to board Blackbeard's ship. They're coming right up on it. And Maynard says, all right, everybody get the fuck down. This crazy bastard might hit us with another broadside, right? And I don't know. I mean, fuck, dude. They killed 20 people on this boat. Remember that. The boat that Maynard's on, the one that's getting ready to come up on Blackbeard's ship and board it. They already lost 20 people on this one ship and had a handful of people wounded, right? So he says, everybody get down now. The closer we get to this boat, the more deadly it is, because if he releases another broadside on us, we're fucked, and it's the end of the whole expedition, right? So Mr. Maynard was the only person that kept the deck, except the man at the helm, whom he directed to lie down snug. And the men in the hold were ordered to get their pistols and their swords ready for close-up fighting, and to come up at his command. In order to which 2 ladders were placed in the hatchway for the more expedition. When the lieutenant's sloop boarded the other, Captain Teach's men, or Blackbeard's men, threw in several new-fashioned sort of grenades, case bottles filled with powder and small shot, slugs, and pieces of lead and iron, with a quick match in the mouth of it. That shit sounds nasty, dude. Right, Aegon? This shit would be wild with swords and pistols, bro. And remember, man, these guys they were fucking rowing this whole time, these guys, right? And think about one more thing, too. Like, when I say think rowing, you're thinking about a rowboat. First, remember how many guys I told you are on this fucking boat that's getting rowed. 20 of them got killed. A handful of them are wounded. And there's still more guys, plus the dude at the helm and fucking Maynard, right, on this boat. This is a big boat to be fucking rowing places. You get what I'm saying? So they're getting ready to board Blackbeard's ship. They come up on it, right? They've got their pistols. They've got their swords and shit ready. They have 2 ladders ready so they can throw it onto the other deck and climb those over, right, on open water. And the pirates just threw a bunch of fucking grenades on their boat, handmade grenades onto their boat. And I'll read again to you what the shit is made of. What's up, Foolish Flock? Good to see you, man. Blackbeard's men threw in several new-fashioned sort of grenades, which were case bottles filled with powder and small shot, slugs, and pieces of lead and iron with a quick match in the mouth of it. That sounds like a nasty fucking piece of business right there, man. When that shit explodes, all those red hot, like small shot, which are like the balls, right? The fucking balls that they would shoot out the end of those muskets. Those red hot would go flying through the air. Slugs would go flying through the air. Pieces of lead and iron would be flying through the air in every possible direction. Holy fuck. Yeah, holy fuck. Which, being lighted without side, presently runs into the bottle to the powder, and as it instantly thrown on board, generally does great execution, besides putting all of the crew into a confusion. But by good providence, they had not that effect here. The men being in the hold, and Blackbeard, seeing few or no hands aboard, told his men that they were all knocked on the head, except for 3 or 4, and therefore, says he, let's jump on board and cut them to pieces. So Blackbeard fucked up. Remember, these guys are trashed. These dudes were up all night drinking. I just want to say that to you again. There's like bad decisions being made right now for people that have had such a long and storied career, right? They weren't paying attention to where they were going. And again, I'll put this in the context of, of like modern, like you're getting chased by the cops, right? You're parked in your car getting fucked. You were just getting fucked up all night, right? You heard the cops are looking for you, but you've heard that a few times. So you're not really worried about it. They haven't come, but all of a sudden they show up. You pay no attention to where you're going. You just gun it, right? And you fucking wreck and you're stuck. okay. In this case, the cops are in very, very large rowboats for all intents and purposes, right? They have like a small sail on there, but if there's no wind, you're not going anywhere. And there's mad oars on this boat. It's pretty big, but it's got no guns on it or anything like that. You're chasing after a pirate who is literally firing fucking cannons at you through all shot, and it just raked the side of your boat and killed 30 people out of your two boats, right? Out of your two sloops. You finally get up close, but everybody's hiding down in the hold, right? So you can't see them. They're literally under a deck. And so most of the cops are down hiding, and you can't see. There's nobody on board. You've got Maynard up at the front. You've got the guy working at the helm. There was 3 or 4 more guys visible on the deck. The pirates throw down a bunch of these grenades that are filled with small shot. And by the time the smoke clears, Blackbeard doesn't see anybody on the deck of the ship anymore. He assumes the grenades took most of the people left out. And he tells all of his pirates, let's just jump on board this ship. Fuck it. Don't even wait for them to come over here. Let's jump onto this boat, and we'll just cut everybody to pieces. Is exactly what it says. You ask yourself, how do we know what these people were saying, right? How are these like firsthand accounts? Well, all the people that live at the end of this go through a big, long trial, right? They go through a long trial. There's actually like court papers on this stuff. Everybody can look this up. You can read them yourself if you'd like. They're free most places, you know. But I think it's at the end of this book that I have here. If it is, we'll go through them, you know, another time when we get to the end of the book. We'll go through some of those things. But yeah, a lot of these, the people that did live through this were all put through trial. A number of them hung, right? So they all gave testimony and fucking had to sit in court and tell their side of the story, the ones that spoke about it. Yeah, so we know what happened through all of this kind of thing. And plus the soldiers, think about that, you know, basically the ones that didn't get killed in the cannon fire or like on deck fighting, they all lived too, and they had to give reports and shit like that. So that answers that question for anybody that was wondering, like, how do we know, right, that this, what you're reading to me right now is actually what happened? Well, that's how you know. These people survived. Some of the ones on the bad guy's side had to go to court and had lawyers and gave all kinds of testimony and shit. The rest of them were cops and filled out reports. So we have both sides. So Blackbeard, seeing few or no hands on board after his men threw all those grenades on the deck, he told all of his pirates that all these guys must have been knocked on the head except for 3 or 4. And therefore, says he, let's jump on board and cut them to pieces. Whereupon, under the smoke of one of the bottles just mentioned, Blackbeard enters with 14 men over the bows of Maynard's ship. It's pretty badass, right? Those fucking bottles are still smoking. There's black gunpowder smoke everywhere. And in the midst of that smoke, Blackbeard and 14 pirates jump off of the pirate ship onto Maynard's sloop, going after the cops. Yeah. Whereupon, under the smoke of one of the bottles just mentioned, Blackbeard enters with 14 men over the bows of Maynard's sloop and the bows of Maynard's sloop. Sorry about the coughing. Excuse me. Blackbeard enters with 14 men over the bows of Maynard's sloop and were not seen by him until the air cleared. However, he just then gave a signal to his men, who all rose from the hold in an instant and attacked the pirates with as much bravery as ever was done upon such an occasion. So the pirates jumped on the deck and nobody was there. Remember, it's still all smoky. As the air is clearing of all this black smoke, Maynard finally sees that the pirates are on the ship, gives the signal like a whistle or a bell or some shit like that, and all the fucking soldiers come up out of the hold and surround the pirates, and they start fighting. Just as the smoke clears and they can see each other. That shit's gnarly. Blackbeard and the lieutenant fired the first pistols at each other, by which the pirate received a wound, and then engaged with swords, till the lieutenants unluckily broke, and stepping back to cock a pistol, Blackbeard with his cutlass was striking at that instant that one of Maynard's men gave him a terrible wound in the neck and throat, by which the lieutenant came off with a small cut over his fingers. Dude, let's do that one more time. Let's read through that one more time. That shit's amazing. I don't even know where to start. I'm just going to start at the top of that one again because it's so badass. Whereupon, under the smoke of one of the bottles just mentioned, Blackbeard enters with 14 pirates over the bows of Maynard's sloop and were not seen by him until the air cleared. He just then gave a signal to his men, who all rose in an instant and attacked the pirates with as much bravery as ever was done upon such an occasion. Blackbeard and the lieutenant fired the first pistols at each other, by which the pirate received a wound. Then they started fighting with swords until the lieutenant's sword unluckily broke, and stepping back to cock a pistol, Blackbeard with his cutlass was striking at him. At that instant, one of the cops gave Blackbeard a terrible wound in the neck and throat, by which the lieutenant came off with a small cut over his fingers. So, dude, Blackbeard and the lieutenant look at each other and fire fucking pistols. Blackbeard gets hit. They go to swords. They start sword fighting. Blackbeard breaks Lieutenant Maynard's fucking sword. As Lieutenant Maynard steps back to cock a pistol, Blackbeard starts swinging his fucking sword at him, cutting his fucking hand up, cut his fingers, but then one of the other soldiers came through and chopped Blackbeard in the fucking neck and part of his throat. They were now, so he's been, listen, so you got to keep track of these because you're never going to believe by the end of this how many are, dude, this dude is fucking hardcore, Blackbeard. So he's already been shot. He's already been chopped in the neck and the throat. Let's keep fucking tabs on these. I'm telling you, you're going to be amazed at this shit. Okay. They were now closely and warmly engaged, the lieutenant and 12 men against Blackbeard and 14 pirates, until the sea around the boat was tinctured with blood. Blackbeard received another shot into his body from the pistol that Lieutenant Maynard discharged, yet he stood his ground and fought with great fury, till he received 25 wounds. 25 fucking wounds. 5 of them by gunshot. Dude. The guy caught 20 fucking chops of a sword, one of them in the neck and the throat, right? And he took 5 pistol shots at pretty close range before he finally fucking fell down dead. So at length, he was cocking another pistol, having fired several before he fell down dead. So he emptied all of his pistols, right? Blackbeard was number one. Blackbeard would have killed Maynard if that other soldier wouldn't have stepped in and chopped him in the neck to get him to back up, obviously, right? Because it said that Blackbeard and Lieutenant Maynard fired the first pistol shots at each other. Blackbeard got hit. Then it went to swords. They started sword fighting. Blackbeard breaks Maynard's sword. Maynard's like, oh shit. He steps back, grabs his pistol, cocks it, and just as Blackbeard's like slicing at him and gets his hands, right? He's probably got one hand up in defense. He's cocking his pistol with the other hand. Blackbeard's chopping his hand up. A soldier comes in, chops fucking Blackbeard in the neck, and then Maynard discharges his pistol, shoots him a second time. Then they're all fighting. And it says by the end of it, Blackbeard had discharged all of his pistols and taken 5 shots plus 20 slices of swords before he finally fell down dead, man. That guy was fucking badass. And if it wouldn't have been for that other soldier, Maynard would have been a dead motherfucker, because we know he got it to take 5 shots and 20 sword chops, right? Maynard did fire the pistol, did hit him that second time, but he would have kept swinging at him, bro. He'd have taken his head off or chopped his fucking ass. Yeah, look, KD says in half, right? Exactly. But that's not how history went. The way history went is he got chopped in the neck and the throat, right? So, and think about that. He got shot twice, chopped in the neck and the throat, and he was still fighting with everybody. It took 3 more pistol shots, right, and 19 more sword chops to bring him down. Yeah. So at length, as he was cocking another pistol, having fired several before, he fell down dead. By which time 8 more out of the 14 pirates also dropped, and all the rest, much wounded, jumped overboard into the water and called out for quarter, which was granted, though it was only prolonging their lives for a few days. So the remainder of the pirates that didn't die, even the ones that were wounded, jumped into the fucking water and asked for quarter. And remember, it said the water around this boat was all filled with blood and started to take on like a red color. That shit's gnarly. Yeah, so it says they were granted quarter by the cops, right, by the soldiers, though it was only prolonging their lives for a few days. These fuckers, they're pirates, right? There's bounties on these fuckers. They're about to get hung in Virginia. Forget about it, right? So the sloop Ranger then came up. Remember when this happened, the other boat, the Ranger, the other cop boat just couldn't get like the right angle on Blackbeard's ship that had run aground. Only Maynard's boat could. So now the Ranger's coming in and attacked the men that remained in Blackbeard's sloop with equal bravery until they likewise cried for quarter. So I guess all the guys that didn't jump in the water, right? Now they cried out for, they gave in too now, right? A whole nother boat full of cops came up fresh, ready to fight. They're like, fuck that, right? We're done. Here was an end of that courageous brute who might have passed in the world for a hero had he been employed in a good cause. His destruction, which was of consequence to the plantations, was entirely owing to the conduct and bravery of Lieutenant Maynard and his men, who might have destroyed him with much less loss had they had a vessel with great guns. Well, yeah, but they didn't. They went in fucking boats after a pirate sloop, to be fair, right? It wasn't it was the Revenge. That was right, close by, and that shit got sunk. We know that. We know where it is. They're constantly pulling stuff off of it. They've got the cannon and all kinds of stuff sitting in salt water, taking all the stuff off of it. Anybody that's interested should look that up. Maybe we'll look that up one time together as one of these pirate shows. We'll go through and look at. I think I might have mentioned that before. I think it's something we should probably do. Is like after we get through a couple of these books, we should do an episode where we go through and just like look at all the pictures of the places that we've discussed, like including like old Panama, Nassau, Tortuga, all that kind of thing. We should probably do that, and then maybe look at some of these ships. That'd be cool. But yeah, they went in boats without cannon, and Blackbeard was like, "Yeah, that's hilarious," and fucking released on a broadside on them. They killed 30 of them immediately and wounded a bunch more. And if he wouldn't have been stuck, he would have got away. We could play this what if game all day long, right? It goes for both sides. So yeah, the cops might have been able to do better if they'd have brought actual fucking cannons or guns, right? North Carolina, KD, Ocracoke Island or Ocracoke Inlet, I believe is North Carolina. That's where the governor and Blackbeard's men had the deal and where they were working together, and that's where Maynard found them, was in Ocracoke, which I believe again is North Carolina. But yeah, so we'll read through this. It says, Lieutenant Maynard and his men, who might have destroyed him with much less loss had they had a vessel with great guns, but they were obliged to use small vessels because the holes and places that he lurked in. So yeah, again, he's in the inlet and he's going in like the different smaller places. And that's why when they found Blackbeard, he was actually on that sloop. It was no small difficulty for them to get to him, and having grounded his vessel at least 100 times and getting up the river besides. So even the cops had grounded their vessels a bunch of times on their way up. But again, Blackbeard made some bad decisions. They caught this guy literally first thing in the morning after he'd been drinking all night. he cut his cable, started speeding out of there, and ran aground. He just fucking wrecked his boat. Dude, what are you going to do? He got stuck. Yep. And they were still all fucked up talking shit. He made a really bad call by jumping on that boat. That's the other thing too, right? Is if he would have stayed on his ship and made them crawl across on the ladders in the first place without worrying about all that smoke, then he would have known how many of those guys there were, right? And they could have fought them accordingly. Plus, they probably would have chopped a bunch of them down and released their cannons again to chop their fucking ship in half. Probably, if they were thinking clearly, could have taken a minute to broadside the Ranger as it started getting closer, right? These guys were drunk, basically. They made a lot of bad decisions, and that was a couple of them, especially that last decision. Like I said, they threw all those grenades onto Maynard's ship, and when they exploded and they looked through the smoke, Blackbeard was like, well, I don't see anybody. It must have knocked everybody the fuck down. Let's just jump onto their boat and kill who's left and call it a day. That was a bad move, because then all those dudes were down in the hold and just came up on them. If they'd have made them come over those ladders, again, they'd have known how many there were. They could have fought a couple of them, as they were even getting on the boat, maybe thin their numbers real fast, throwing some grenades into them. Again, we could play this what if game all day long, but that's just not what happened. They made bad decisions, but it still took them 5 pistol shots and 20 sword chops to kill Blackbeard. That shit is gnarly, man. The broadside that did so much mischief before they boarded, in all probability, saved the rest from destruction. For before that, Blackbeard had little or no hopes of escaping, and therefore had posted a resolute fellow whom he had bred up as a pirate with a lighted match in the powder room with commands to blow up the whole ship when he should give him orders, which was as soon as the lieutenant and his men could have entered. So he might have destroyed his conquerors, and when the guy found out how it went with Blackbeard, he could hardly be persuaded from the rash action by 2 prisoners that were then in the hold of the sloop. That shit's crazy. So Blackbeard was like, he had a backup plan, and he didn't even think, again, this dude was sauced, man, or he's just a moron for this, because they jumped onto the other ship. And he said, if they make it on this boat, blow the whole thing up, right? But then what does it matter? If you jump on that boat, and I mean, I guess maybe you just to kill them when you're dead, or maybe, but then you're killing your friends that are left too. I think that's kind of fucked up, but I get the evil part of it. It's like, if I die over there, blow up the ship with everybody that's on it. Fuck them. And this guy was so down for Blackbeard because he had raised him up in this life. He was so down with Blackbeard that it took a couple of people to talk him out of blowing himself the fuck up along with the ship. That's pretty crazy. Okay, so let's go. Let's continue. What seems a little odd is that some of these men who behaved so bravely against Blackbeard went afterwards a pirating themselves. And one of them was taken along with Roberts, but I do not find that any of them were provided for, except one that was hanged. But this is a digression. Well, that's kind of weird. So he says some of those soldiers that killed Blackbeard that day eventually turned pirates themselves, and some of them actually were with the fucking pirate Roberts. That's pretty wild. And it says that one of them actually got hung for piracy himself. So some of these cops ended up being pirates, sailed with a famous pirate, and one of them ended up getting hung himself for piracy. That shit's nuts. The lieutenant caused Blackbeard's head to be severed from his body and hung up at the boltsprit end when he sailed to Bathtown to get relief for his wounded men. So he had Blackbeard's head cut off of his body and stuck onto the fucking board that was off the front of his ship. Can you imagine? He had Blackbeard's head stuck to the front of his fucking boat as he... That shit's gnarly. It must be observed that in rummaging through Blackbeard's sloop, they found several letters and written papers which discovered the correspondence between Governor Eden, the secretary and collector, and also some traders in New York. So they found all of Blackbeard's paperwork and like all the letters and shit that he was writing back and forth with the governor and the secretary of North Carolina, as well as some traders that they were using in New York to sell their pirate goods. That's pretty wild. They found all that shit in his boat. It is likely he had regard enough for his friends to have destroyed these papers before the action in order to hinder them from falling into such hands, where the discovery would be of no use, either to the interest of reputation of these fine gentlemen, if it had not been his fixed resolution to have blown up together when he found no possibility of escaping. That shit's crazy. Yeah, the guy, they're saying that he should have burned that stuff if he even thought that the cops were coming. Think about that. I think that's probably a good point to make about evidence lying around in your ship, right? Probably if you know that the cops are looking for you, you should probably have gotten rid of the evidence by now, man. That's not a good look. When the lieutenant came to Bathtown, he made bold to seize in the governor's storehouse the 60 hogsheads of sugar, and from honest Mr. Knight 20, which it seems was their dividend of the plunder taken in the French ship. The latter did not long survive this shameful discovery, for being apprehensive that he might be called to account for these trifles, fell sick with the fright and died in a few days. What the fuck is that? Fell sick of fright. That's weird. Maybe he had a fucking heart attack, right? Maybe he had like an anxiety attack, triggered his heart, and he died. After the wounded men were pretty well recovered, the lieutenant sailed back to the men of war in James River, Virginia, with Blackbeard's head still hanging at the boltsprit end, and 15 prisoners, 13 of whom were hanged. Whew. Dude, he had that gross and gnarly, right? That head was sitting on the fucking boltsprit end of that ship for all that time. When he sailed in to Bathtown, he hung out there for a while for people to like get better from being wounded, and then sailed for days back up to the James River in Virginia, and that head was still on the fucking front of that boat. That shit is nasty. That shit's gross, man. Yeah, and when he got there, he still had 15 prisoners, 13 of whom were hanged. It appearing upon trial that one of them, Samuel Odell, was taken out of the trading sloop at the night before the engagement. This poor fellow was a little unlucky at his first entering upon his new trade, there appearing no less than 70 wounds upon him after the action. Damn. Notwithstanding which he lived and was cured of them all. The other person that escaped the gallows was one Israel Hands. That's the master of Blackbeard's sloop and his ship, and formerly the guy that was put in charge. Remember we were talking about that guy Bonnet, that rich guy that had a pirate ship, and we said Blackbeard put one of his most trusted guys on board of that ship to be the new captain. Well, that's Israel Hands. Israel Hands was Blackbeard's right-hand man. He was the master of the Queen Anne's Revenge, the master of the ship, right? And whenever they were on a sloop together, he was the master of the sloop. So two pirates were spared being hung. One had literally just joined the pirates the night before. That shit's crazy. And he got 70 wounds in that fight and lived. Right? He lived. He escaped being hung. And then Israel Hands, Blackbeard's right-hand man, was also spared the gallows. Yeah. So the master of Blackbeard's sloop and formerly captain of the same before the Queen Anne's Revenge was lost in Topsail Inlet. Israel Hands happened not to be in the fight, but was taken afterwards ashore at Bathtown, having been sometime before disabled by Blackbeard. This is a true fucking story. This shit is crazy. Let me start at the top of this. Israel Hands happened not to be in the fight at all, but was taken afterwards ashore at Bathtown, having been sometime before disabled by Blackbeard in one of his savage humors. One night while drinking in his cabin with Israel Hands, the pilot and another man, right? So Blackbeard, Israel Hands, the pilot of the ship, and another man were drinking in Blackbeard's cabin. Okay. When out of nowhere, without any provocation, Blackbeard drew out a small pair of pistols, cocked them both under the table, which being perceived by the man, he withdrew and went upon deck, leaving only Israel Hands, the pilot, and Blackbeard together. When the pistols were ready, Blackbeard blew out the candle, crossed his pistols under the table, and discharged them at his company. What a fucking nutcase. This guy's insane. This is a true story, though, and this guy's insane. So you had Blackbeard plus 3 guys down there drinking in Blackbeard's cabin. Blackbeard is all drunk and fucked up. All of them are all drunk and fucked up. But Blackbeard grabs 2 pistols, cocks them, and one of the guys that's sitting at the table is like, fuck this. He gets up and walks out. Blackbeard probably laughed his ass off, right? But he left only now 2 guys sitting down there with Blackbeard. Blackbeard's got these pistols cocked. He blows out the candle so it's dark in his cabin. Blackbeard puts the pistols under the table, crosses his hands, right? And then fires the guns. Israel Hands was shot through the knee and lamed for life. The other pistol totally missed the other guy. Being asked the meaning of this, why he would do such a thing, he only answered by damning them that if he did not now and then kill one of them, they would forget who he was. That shit's insane, dude. Insane. Why the fuck did you put 2 guns under the table, cross your hands, and fire them at us? Why would you do that? You just fucking lamed your right-hand man, dude. The guy is shot right. He's always going to have a cane or a crutch, right? And he says, fuck you guys. If I don't kill one of you now and then, people will forget who the fuck I am. Insane motherfucker. Insane motherfucker. Israel Hands, being taken and arrested, was tried and condemned, but just as he was about to be executed, a ship arrived at Virginia with a proclamation for prolonging the time of His Majesty's pardon to such of the pirates as should surrender by a limited time therein expressed. Notwithstanding the sentence, Israel Hands pleaded the pardon and was allowed the benefit of it, and is alive at this time in London begging his bread. Imagine that. They were going to kill him, but a ship showed up with a proclamation saying that all pirates could be forgiven, and he claimed the fucking pardon, and they actually let him out of it. That's pretty wild, man. He went back to London, and he was basically a beggar. That shit's crazy. Now, they did not give a description of another thing that Blackbeard's really well known for having done. He also gathered up a bunch of coal and brimstone one time, and he went down into the hold of Queen Anne's Revenge, had all these giant pots filled with this coal and brimstone, and he gathered all of his people down there. They set the shit on fire so that it just started smoking, right? These rocks, they were basically like stones, right? Big chunks of brimstone and coal. And he got them all, these big pots of them smoking. He put fires under them and started filling the whole entire hold with this thick, sooty fucking brimstone smoke and coal smoke. And he wanted to see how long they could all sit down there for. And he said that it says that in hell it's supposed to be like fire and brimstone. So he says we'll make a little bit of hell for ourselves here on earth to see what's in store for us, to see how long we can really take it for, right? This dude was nuts, man. He also understood branding. These are stories that he could have just told if he wanted to, but he didn't. Some of these things he really did so that they would be talked about. You know, there's a big difference between talking about yourself and other people's telling stories about you. That's different, right? And he understood the power in that. So he would do these insane things so that other people would tell these stories. But yeah, imagine that, being down in the hold of a ship at night, dark, pitch dark, except for these fires that are burning giant cauldrons full of coal and brimstone, just filling all the air around you. And you're down there with some fucking psycho that won't let you out because he wants to see how long you can survive in hell, since you're all going there anyway. What a fucking nut. Excuse me. Hang on one second. What the fuck? Do what you're told. Work. Why you no work for? Fucking piece of shit. Yeah, foolish lock. Dude was insane. Dude was insane. Let me see what else we've got. Okay. So they're going to talk a little bit about Israel Hands is going to describe to you, right, Blackbeard and his whole thing about looking as fierce as he did. Okay, so here we go. Teach's beard was black, which he suffered to grow at an extravagant length. Now remember, this is Israel Hands, his right-hand man, telling us what his boy looked like. He's in court. But he's telling everybody what this fucking dude looked like and what his whole thing was about. So if you've got a good imagination, imaginate. Here we go. Teach's beard was black, which he suffered to grow of an extravagant length. As to breadth, it came up to his eyes. He was accustomed to twist it with ribbons and small tails after the manner of our Ramillies wigs, and turn them about his ears at times. In time of action, he wore a sling over his shoulders with 3 brace of pistols hanging in holsters like bandoliers. He stuck lighted matches under his hat, which appearing on each side of his face, his eyes naturally looking fierce and wild, made him altogether such a figure that imagination cannot form an idea of a fury from hell to look more frightful. That shit's wild, man. Think about that. So his beard was black. It was crazy fucking long. It was so thick that it grew almost up to his eyes. He would twist it with ribbons and small tails and turn the like long braids over his ears sometimes. And he wore 2 big braces of pistols, 3 apiece. So he had six pistols across his chest, hanging like bandoliers. And he would stick lighted matches under his hat, 1 on each side of his face. And his eyes were always fierce and wild. So altogether, it made him look like a figure that imagination cannot form, an idea of a fury from hell to look more frightful. If he had the look of a fury, his humors and passions were suitable to it. We shall relate 2 or 3 more of his extravagancies, which we omitted in the body. Oh, maybe they'll talk about it here. I forget. It's been fucking forever since I've read this book. We shall relate 2 or 3 more of his extravagancies, which we omitted in the body of his history, by which it will appear to what a pitch of wickedness human nature may arrive if its passions are not checked. So they're like, we're going to tell you how fucking psycho this guy was, right? If he had the look of a fury, his humors and passions were suitable to it, right? The things that made him laugh, he had a dark sense of humor and he would do fucked up shit is basically what that meant. In the commonwealth of pirates, he who goes the greatest length of wickedness is looked upon with a kind of envy amongst them, as a person of a more extraordinary gallantry, and is thereby entitled to be distinguished by some post. And if such a one has but courage, he must certainly be a great man. The hero of whom we are writing was thoroughly accomplished this way, and some of his frolics of wickedness were so extravagant as if he aimed at making his men believe he was actually a devil incarnate. Okay, yeah, so here's the story I was just telling you. So let's read as it's described by old Israel. One day at sea, and a little flushed with drink, Teach said, "Hey, come, let us make a hell of our own and try how long we can bear it here on earth." Accordingly, he went down into the hold and got things ready. Then once everybody was down there with him in the hold, they closed it up, all the hatches, filled several pots full of brimstone and other combustible matter, and set it on fire, and so continued until they were almost suffocated and died. When some of the men cried out for air, at length he opened the hatches, not a little pleased that he held out the longest. The night before he was killed, he set up and drank until the morning. See, this is what I'm talking about. This dude was fucking sauced when the cops came. He made all kinds of bad decisions. So the night before he was killed, he set up and drank until the morning with some of his own men and the master of a merchantman. And having had intelligence of the two sloops coming to attack him, as has been observed before, one of his men asked him, in case anything should happen to him in the engagement with the sloops, whether his wife knew where he had buried his money. He answered that nobody but himself and the devil knew where it was, and the longest liver should take it all. Those of his crew who were taken alive told a story which may appear a little incredible. However, we think it will not be fair to omit it, since we had it from their own mouths. So first of all, I mean, Israel Hands could have made this up. It seems a little fantastical that people asked him, like, if you die in battle, does your wife know where your treasure is? Does he know? Do they know where you buried your money? This dude didn't have to bury anything. When he showed up to North Carolina, he showed up and took a part in. Him and his men were just spending money for a few weeks. It literally said that they were running out of money and they decided to go out pirating again. So these dudes had ditched. Remember, they ditched a dozen guys on a fucking sand spit out in the ocean. They ditched, another 30 in the river. Blackbeard and 20 of his guys just showed up in North Carolina, made a deal with the governor to take a pardon. They had some money to live on, but they went broke again, and they went out pirating. They did a couple of deals with the governor, only a couple, before the guys sent word out to Virginia, right? And these dudes were in the river just like hanging out, getting drunk. And when they did go pirating from Virginia, they got like cocoa and fucking molasses and all kinds of weird shit like that. Brought it back, sold it to the governor. They got some loot for it, but then they were just drinking, and the pirates went out and like got a bunch of whores and stuff like that. You know what I mean? There was really no treasure to be buried anywhere. Even when Blackbeard sat out there off the coast and took that whole town hostage, the only thing he demanded was a chest full of medicines, because all of his guys had VD, right? That's literally why they even blockaded the town to begin with, right? Charles Vane had just been there and run through the fucking town. The people were terrified. Charles Vane and his men went through. They were savages. They took a bunch of shit from the town. Blackbeard blocked up the whole thing, took some people hostage, and he told the governor that he wanted a chest full of medicines. He wanted $2,500 worth of medicine, because all the people in Blackbeard's fleet had the fucking clap. They all had VD from banging whores down in fucking Jamaica. So there wasn't even money then, right? So I think this is my opinion, knowing what I know, reading what I've read. I think the Israel hands might have made that part up. Or the person that wrote down what Israel hands said made this part up. I don't put a whole lot of weight on that right there. Okay. So those of his crew who were taken alive told a story which may appear a little incredible. However, we think it will not be fair to omit it, since we had it from their own mouths. That once upon a cruise, they found out that they had a man on board more than their crew. Such a one was seen several days amongst them, sometimes below deck and sometimes upon deck. Yet no man in the ship could give an account of who he was or where the hell he came from, but that he disappeared little before they were cast away in their great ship. But it seems they verily believed it was the devil. One would think these things should induce them to reform their lives, but so many reprobates together encouraged and spirited one another up into their wickedness, to which a continual course of drinking did not a little contribute. For in Blackbeard's journal, which was taken, there were several memorandums of the following nature that were written by his own hand. On this day, rum all out, our company somewhat sober. A damned confusion amongst us. Rogues applauding. Great talk of separation. So I looked sharp for a prize. Another day. Took one with a great deal of liquor on board, so kept the company hot, damned hot. Then all things went well again. That's actually pretty funny, right? So in Blackbeard's own journal, on one day he says, rum is all out. Our company is somewhat sober. A damned confusion amongst us. Rogues applauding. Great talk of separation. So I looked sharp for a prize. On another day, we took a prize with a great deal of liquor on board, so it kept the company hot, meaning drunk, damn drunk. Then all things went well again. That's pretty fucking hilarious. Thus it was these wretches passed their lives with very little pleasure or satisfaction in the possession of what they violently take away from others, and sure to pay for it at last by an ignominious death. The names of the pirates killed in the engagement are as follows. Edward Teach, a.k.a. Blackbeard, commander. Philip Morton, gunner. Garrett Gibbons, boatswain. Owen Roberts, carpenter. Thomas Miller, quartermaster. So Thomas Miller was the quartermaster of Blackbeard's ship. That's the person that spoke for the crew. That's who the quartermaster was the person that stood for the crew, would deliver orders to the crew from the administration of the boat or from the captain. And he would always vote with the men, right? He would even go against the captain or depose a captain for the men. That was his job. So whoever that Thomas Miller person was the quartermaster. All right, let's see. All the rest except the two last were wounded and afterwards hanged in Virginia. John Carnes, Joseph Phillips, Joseph Brooks, James Robbins, James Blake, John Martin, John Gills, Edward Salter, Thomas Gates, Stephen Daniel, James White, Richard Greensail, Richard Stiles, Israel Hands pardoned, Caesar Samuel Odell acquitted. There were in the pirate sloops and ashore in a tent near where the sloops lay 25 hogshead of sugar, 11 tierces, and 145 of cocoa, a barrel of indigo, and a bale of cotton, which, with what was taken from the governor and secretary and the sale of the sloop, came to 2,500 pounds sterling, besides the rewards paid by the governor of Virginia pursuant to this proclamation, all which was divided among the companies of the two ships, Lime and Pearl, that lay in James River. Excuse me. The brave fellows that took them coming in for no more than their dividend amongst the rest, and what was paid within these 3 months. That's pretty wild. So they sold off all the shit the pirates had in a tent on the shore, which was a bunch of cocoa, a bunch of sugar, and whatever the fuck tierces are, as well as a barrel of indigo and a bale of cotton. The cops sold all that shit off, and they sold the sloop, and in total it came out to 2,500 pounds sterling, and they divided that between the two men of war that the soldiers came from. That's pretty wild. Pretty wild. Yep. So such is the story of Blackbeard, huh? Fucking guy was a privateer, sailed with Hornigold and Jennings. Hornigold was the one that gave him his very first ship and very first captaincy, right? Hornigold literally put him on a boat and said, "This one's yours. You're a captain now." Went into Nassau, right? The pirate kingdom, where Hornigold flipped on everybody and joined up with fucking Woodes Rogers to be a pirate hunter, the fucking bastard that he is. Yeah, so Hornigold literally flipped on Blackbeard and Vane and Rackham and like all the people that had, were working so hard to keep Nassau an independent pirate kingdom. Hornigold flipped on them, joined up with Woodes Rogers as the new governor of Nassau, or of the Bahamas, and Hornigold became a fucking pirate hunter, the bastard that he was. Blackbeard took off, went up the coast of the Americas, basically, right? Came up to Spanish Florida and up through the colonies and stuff. He blockaded an entire city that Charles Vane had just done the same thing to a couple of months before, a couple of weeks, maybe it was months. I want to say it was a couple of weeks. Either way, recently, right? Charles Vane had already fucked this town over. They were scared to death. They were so scared to death of the pirates because of Charles Vane and his savage crew that when Blackbeard sent some of his pirates ashore to walk through the town, right? They walked through the town with some of the people that they had taken on ships in the bay. They walked through the fucking town all the way to the governor's office and told the governor, "We need medicine, and we're not leaving until you give us a chest of medicine," right? Mandy says a tierce is 42 gallons. Okay, so I guess that was a measurement. It just said 11 tierces. Yeah, so that's kind of weird. It says 25 hogshead of sugar, 11 tierces, and 145 bags of cocoa. So I guess maybe 11 tierces of cocoa. I don't know. That's weird. 42 gallons. Cocoa would be powder. Anyway, they got 11 tierces of something. Excuse me. But yeah, in either case, Blackbeard took off from Nassau because the fucking dude that put him on to pirating flipped with the cops, and they were killing fucking pirates in Nassau. So Blackbeard took the fuck off in the Queen Anne's Revenge. He hit some boats on the way there, met up with Bonnet, right? Went off of being a captain, took his boat, gave the captaincy to Israel Hands, his right-hand man. They kept sailing around. Blackbeard decided he had too many pirates with him. He didn't want to be splitting these takes, with all these people, and he figured he needed some new fences. Right in Nassau, they had fences set up. They could just go to Nassau. They could sell the things that they stole, and then Nassau would send those things off to the New World. He didn't have that now. So Blackbeard decided he had too many guys with him, and he, in a dick move, stranded these motherfuckers in the open. Well, one group of them, he stranded on a ship on a sand spit, right? He ran into the ground. At least it was kind of close to land. A group of guys, those poor dudes, got left in the middle of the ocean on this little itty bitty finger of sand. Coincidentally, got picked up a couple of days later by Bonnet, who had also been kicked off by Blackbeard, a little while before. But Bonnet, when Blackbeard put him off and left him on shore, Bonnet had money. Don't forget that Bonnet had all these businesses, right? He came from Barbados. He was a rich guy. He bought a boat on the DL back in the day. He paid his first crew to go out a pirating with him. So when Blackbeard dropped him off on shore, he was just like, well, I'll just buy a new boat, right? That's exactly what he did. He was just like, fuck it, I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm still going to be a pirate captain, right? That's what he dreamed about. He left his wife and his family and shit in Barbados, sold off some of his businesses. He had this money squirreled away just for his dream of being a pirate. So when Blackbeard fucking took his boat and left him on shore, Bonnet was like, cool, I'll just go buy another boat and get another crew. Fuck you. You're right, Bob, I'm cool. And when he sailed out, he came across those dudes stranded on that sand spit and picked them up and brought them on board with him. But then Blackbeard's just like turned the governor out in North Carolina. He turned that dude out, Governor Eden. He said, listen, man, you've got a perfect setup here. If you just look the other way, we've been pardoned, right? We'll pretend different ways of how we come across the things that we sell you, right? We'll go out, we'll do pirating and stuff like that, but we'll just sink the fucking boats in the ocean. Nobody will even know these boats existed, right? When we rob a boat, we'll just make sure we burn it to the water line, make sure nobody's alive to tell the tale. Fuck it. Not how I wanted to operate, but that's what we'll do. And then we'll sell it to you at a discount, and you can sell it to the town, and you can make basically straight profit. And that's what they do. But they fucked up because Blackbeard's guys, the pirates that were with him, were some wild think about it. Blackbeard was literally an insane psychopath, this guy, right? He took his branding way to a whole nother level. Remember what Israel Hands was telling us about, how he did his appearance, like the stories that he would tell, the things that he would do to his men so that they would talk about him, so that these stories would make it out, right? So the guys that were sailing with him were fucking hardcore, is the short version of that. And they were just trashing shit in the area, right? They were working with the governor and selling him things, but then they would go onto people's plantations and farms and fuck shit up and steal from them and have sex with their wives and their daughters and all this stuff. And they didn't give a fuck. And Blackbeard was just laughing. He didn't give a shit. If anybody complained, he would just tell them to go fuck themselves. And then he'd have sex with their wife too. So finally the traders got together and said, something's got to be done about this, So Blackbeard never had a chance to really stack any serious coin, right? None of those guys did. Whenever they made any money, they just came to shore, and that the pirates just partied and drank, and so did Blackbeard. These guys never really had substantial wealth. It never happened for them. They were just known for the stories that were around them, right, in the time that they were alive and pirating. And because this fight is just unbelievable, right? I mean, it's the perfect story. Blackbeard being such a huge brand at the time, right? This devil guy is supposed to be like the devil incarnate. Strikes being over the top with the smoke around him and the fucking matches in his hair, right? And all these pistols across him. And he got in a fight with the fucking cops and he killed a bunch of them. And then it took them 5 pistol shots and 20 sword chops to actually bring the guy down finally. And yeah, I mean, he totally would have fucking killed Maynard if he wouldn't have caught that chop to the neck that backed him up for just a minute. Because he took, Maynard, his sword broke up and cocked his pistol. He fired that shot and hit Blackbeard a second time, right? So Maynard shot Blackbeard twice, to be fair. It says when Blackbeard jumped on the boat with the pirates, the first 2 people to strike at each other were Maynard and Blackbeard, and they fired pistols at each other. It says that Blackbeard was the one that got hit, right? So Blackbeard's hit with that first pistol shot. They fight with swords. Blackbeard fucks his shit up, chops his sword in half, starts swinging at him, trying to kill him, gets shot, and chopped in the neck. So yeah, that shit backed him up for a minute, right? That shit backed him up for a minute. I think it probably would have killed most people or got most people to just surrender and freak out and run or cry or do some shit, right? But yeah, an amazing story. That's why that shit stuck around for so long, right? You had this just unbelievable battle. They threw grenades on the boat. They thought everybody was dead, but they were all so drunk. They were just like, fuck it, onward, jumped on the boat, right? Maynard had all his guys down in the hold, jumped out. They all started fighting. It was a gnarly fight. The boat's surrounded by, this water that's starting to take on a blood color from all the people that are getting killed and thrown overboard. Plus, that first broadside had killed 30 dudes and wounded a bunch more anyway. So blood was just collecting all around in the water with the bodies and stuff. The guys that were trying to surrender were jumping in the water, no doubt wounded. The one guy that lived took 70 wounds and lived through it, right? That guy that had joined the pirates just the night before, which is why they acquitted him. He was like, listen, man, wrong place, wrong time. The guy was like, dude, I was in the river. I decided to hang out and get drunk with the pirates. I'm sorry. I fucked up. I wanted to meet the guys. I wanted to party with the pirates. Before I knew it, I was literally in the middle of a fucking war with the cops, bro. I got wounded 70 fucking times and I lived. And the judge was like, all right, bro, you know what? I get it. You wanted to hang out, have drinks with the pirates. The cops showed up. You got caught in some shit. We won't hang you. Probably send him to a fucking work camp or did some horrible shit to him. He probably had to do some kind of sentence, I'm sure. Maybe not. It says acquitted, but I just don't trust those fucking people back in the day. They were fucked up. Those people were super fucked up, right? I'm out of drink. I'm gonna have to get some more drink. Most people need cocaine to keep going like Blackbeard did. That's funny. That's why I just kept reminding everybody that literally he was drinking all night until the morning. He hadn't even slept, right? As soon as morning broke, that's when Maynard started sailing towards him. Maynard only stopped going after him because it became nighttime, right? Remember, Maynard was in these boats and he had some sloops with him, but he didn't know how deep that water was, He didn't want to get his guys stuck, knowing that this boat that Blackbeard was on had all those cannon and they didn't have any. So as soon as it started getting dark, Maynard's like, okay, fuck this. This dude knows his way around here. We don't. We're basically using oars as power, right? We have pistols and swords. We're not going to try and get close to this dude in the middle of the night. Just wait here. But as soon as it became morning and he could see, he weighed anchor and he jumped into the boat that was sounding as they went. They were literally checking the depth of the water as they got closer and closer to Blackbeard's ship. And again, if Blackbeard wouldn't have been sauced and fucked up first thing in the morning, he would have probably made a better decision. He would have thought about where he was going, right? He wouldn't have ran aground. That's one. So he probably could have got away. But let's say for the other that he just wanted to have a running fight with the guy, right? Let's say he wanted to kill all these dudes and he just wanted to at least be mobile. He probably could have done that too. He knew the waters around there. But he was fucking totally drunk. So were all the other guys that were on the boat from partying all night. And they literally just ran aground. They weren't watching where they were going and they wrecked. Even then, they could have got through it if thinking rationally, right? They would have just been like, we're going to make them rush our ship, right? We threw all the grenades on their boat. Let them blow up. Let them try and get on our ship. Because the moment they put those ladders on our ship and they start trying to cross over, I want you guys to just start hacking them to pieces on the fucking ladders. Like a lot of them wouldn't have even made it onto the ship in the first place. They would have thinned those numbers out. Then they could have maybe turned around, saw that, the Ranger was indeed trying to get an angle on their boat. They could have released another broadside. Easy. They could have released another broadside if they'd have been thinking and working, in a sober fashion. It wouldn't have been a problem. They could have laid the fucking Ranger down. They'd already killed 9 dudes on board that boat. And wounded a few. They got 20 on Maynard's ship in that first broadside. If they were just going after the Ranger, they could have killed easily, another 15, 20, 30, or just sunk the fucking thing if they aimed for the water line. So yeah, you could play the what if game all day long, you know, just like the cops did in the story. Like Maynard, you know, if they would have had bigger guns on their boat, if they would have been prepared for the shallow water, if they would have known their way around, if. But that's not what happened. You know, it's not what happened. But that's why this story is so epic, for the way that it went down. You know, Blackbeard was this huge brand, this larger than life character that was, you know, ghost stories were told about this guy. You know, they made him seem like a devil incarnate, and then the cops being the underdogs, right? All of those wounds that those guys took and didn't die, all of the wounds that it took to kill Blackbeard. And then, right, the fucking cherry on top, Maynard cuts Blackbeard's head off and sticks it on the front of his boat and goes sailing down the river with it into Bathtown, keeps it on the front of his boat, and sails all the way back to the James River, or up the James River in Virginia, still with the head on the front. He just pulled into port with that fucking thing on the front of his boat. You know, so yeah, this shit went down in history and will always be talked about. We're talking about it now, right? This shit happened in 1718, November of 1718. So people will be talking about this for a very, very, very long time. Indeed. It's a fantastic tale. I think next pirate show, we will get into Captain Vane or Captain Rackham. We'll see how much we can get through in the next episode. If we get through one, we might get into the other. I'm looking forward to doing both, so I'm not sure. Maybe we'll start with Captain Vane. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe next episode we will do Captain Vane. That is a great tale. He's an awesome fucking pirate, and cool story. Savage pirate for sure. No getting around that. But yeah, so I'm not going to stick around for much longer. I already did almost 2 hours. I said I was only going to do an hour. But yeah, I'm fucking feeling like shit. I'm been sick all week. I just wanted to get on here and do this show for all the people. Like I said, a handful of people wrote me where I was at, wanting to know. Mandy was one of them today, actually, that wrote and asked when we were going to be doing another show. And I told her, I said, actually, I'm going to do one tonight, you know, because she was like the 5th person that wrote me this week asking me why I hadn't done the show or when's the show going to be. But yeah, I've been sick as fuck all week long. I'm still sick right now. I'm going to take my cold medicine when I get done with this here. Go lay on the couch for a while, try and catch some sleep before I've got to work sick tomorrow. You know how it goes, man. So, yeah, we'll be back. I'll be on tomorrow night though for the Skull Bro show. I will be, I don't know, just fucking manning through it. You know what I mean? I'm hoping I'm going to feel better tomorrow. Let's put it that way. I hope that I feel better tomorrow, but if not, I will still be around tomorrow night for the Skull Bro show, 10:30, of course, for anybody that's in here that is listening to this later that doesn't know. Everybody that's in here right now does know anyway, because they're always there. But anybody that listens to this later that's not familiar with the show, we'll be doing the Skull Bro show tomorrow night with all kinds of weird news and trash on blast and shit like that. Anything weird that we can get a hold of, we'll be talking about tomorrow, along with all the people that we don't like, I'm sure. So I will be back tomorrow night. But for the pirate show, we'll do next week. Feeling better, we'll go ahead and we'll do Captain Vane, sticking with the Nassau pirates, the golden age of piracy, if you will. But yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow night. And for anybody listening there, I'll see you next week. Take it easy.
The king and his men stole the queen from her bed and bound her in her bones. The seas be ours. rivers and by the powers where we will we roam. Yo ho, all hands, hoist the colors high. Heave ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die. Now some have died and some are alive, and others sail on the sea with the keys to the cage and the devil to pay. We lay to fiddler's grave.